Hey guys, RagingRashaka here. Just wanted to get in a little review, kind of a reaction to the Path of Exile 2 update coming out. I think the launch date is April the 4th. It's called Dawn of the Hunt. This is kind of the reveal video that they did just a couple of days ago. I'd recorded this once before, but there was a massive sound problem, and I'm having to re-record it. So sorry that it's coming out so late compared to when the video came out, but let's go ahead and jump in.
I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Welcome to GGG Live. Well, it's been a little over 3 months since we launched Early Access, so it's about time for our first major content update. Today, we're going to show you an exclusive reveal of Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, which launches on April 4th. Twitch drops are enabled on today's live stream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Executioner's Guillotine finisher effect. Now in today's stream,
Just
we're
point
going to
out
take you on a
that
deep dive into the new Dawn of the Hunt update.
that was for their live
We'll cover a
update,
new
not for
class,
currently.
5 new Ascendancy classes, and huge expansions on character systems like unique items and support gems. After that, it's on to the in-game improvements, including changes to systems, a bunch of new encounters, and lots of other content.
And we won't be doing the Q&A
We're
at
going to
the
finish up
end,
today with a live
just doing the
Q&A
video.
session where Ziggy D will ask Path of Exile 2's game directors, myself and Mark, your questions from Twitch chat. Now we have a lot to cover today, so let's get started with a trailer for Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt.
All right, let's see this.
We as Mary are guided by the Spirit. It provides prey, shelter, even love. But for me, one day, all that were changed. The Spirit, it showed me something. Something forbidden. And to defend all I loved, I used it. I lost everything that day. But fate weren't finished with me yet. I'll right the wrongs I've done. I'll do what I must, no matter the cost. I will hear the Spirit once more.
Don't make me kill you! I shall bathe in your blood!
Yeah, so opening video looked really good. There was a interview that was done a little while back with Rod Ferguson, who's the head of Diablo 4. It was really funny because he made a comment at that point about how he's annoyed that ARPG games aren't called Diablo-like games. And I mean, when you look at the amount of effort that's being put into Diablo games compared to what's being put into other games that are out these days, I mean, this game here basically just gave us a full trailer, some minor storyline, and a whole bunch of new content that seems like it's going to be roughly equal to Vessel of Hatred for Diablo 4, and it's just a free update for the early access to the game. So it's basically like, hey, here's a new character. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Spiritborn, just, kind of that vibe. And, there's seems to be a little bit of a story going along with it. I mean, it's probably not going to be quite the in-depth story that Vessel of Hatred had, but I mean, who really spends a whole lot of time playing the story in a Diablo game anyways? Most people just keep doing the repeated playthrough over and over. So the story aspect of it is like yeah, you might watch it one time, but then after that you get into it and it's just okay, let's just go and play the game now. So the important part of that expansion, they're basically giving us as just a minor update for a for this version of the game. Now, a couple of things I did notice is they said they were going to have over 100 new support. I think it said support gems. I didn't notice. I don't remember if it said support or skill. That's pretty good, but we already knew that there were a bunch more skill gems coming to the game because every time they add a new character, they're going to have to add all the skills that are going to be associated with that character. And then they also had spots for extra support skills that they hadn't implemented in the first iteration of the early access. So that doesn't really surprise me. Now, the 100 or more new unique items is really nice, but honestly, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of unique items that are going to be limited to this character. Probably shields or javelins or something like that. That's going to be unique to effects on this character. So there's a good chance that out of the 100-ish new uniques, that maybe 30 or 40 of them potentially could be something designed specifically for this character. Because not only are you going to have weapons and things that are unique to this class that is going to go in, but then you're also going to have various types of armor or jewelry or things like that are going to power up those abilities as well. So I would say a good chunk of those new uniques are going to be specifically for this character, but I mean that still leaves 60 or more on average for all of the other classes as well, which also kind of just fills out some more of the uniques because the game was very limited on uniques. I just hope they don't get too crazy with the acquisition of them, because a lot of them were actually kind of rare to get, the ones you really wanted to get. So I would like to see them put more on like destination bosses or like a pinnacle boss or something along those lines to be able to get them, as opposed to just having the same random chance to get uniques, but now there's twice as many or 3 times as many, and so now they're just that much more rare to get. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah, so far it's looking really good. And yeah, April 4th is when it's coming out. 12 p.m. Pacific
As you
time.
can see, in Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the first new class since early access to PoE 2, the Huntress. The Huntress is a spear-wielding Asmeri warrior. Born into a society with strict traditions, she was exiled from her homeland after using the power of a skill gem to defend her village. As a dexterous spear user, she specializes in both melee and ranged combat, dashing into and out of battle. Spears have extended range and a short dash, but unlike other melee weapons, you can also throw them.
That's actually really cool.
In order to make a hybrid ranged and melee character work, we had to do a lot of thinking about ways to make it fun to both enter and exit melee range. The first skill you will get as a Huntress is Whirling Slash. As well as striking in a circle around you, this skill creates a whirlwind that blinds your enemies. Leaving the whirlwind...
Blinding is really powerful.
The more Whirling Slash is used, the bigger the whirlwind, and the bigger the explosion.
That's pretty nice.
Once you're out of there, you'll want to follow up with something ranged. Whip your spear around to shoot twisters towards your foes. These twisters bounce off walls and can hit enemies multiple times. You can also throw twisters inside a whirlwind to shoot out extra tornadoes that do way more damage. In her offhand, the Huntress will usually want to hold a buckler, which allows you to do a new skill, Parry. While holding down Parry, your character will counterattack any incoming attack from monsters near you, stunning them. In addition, the monsters will take extra attack damage from your follow-up strike. Some specific skills are designed to be used after a parry and have extra effects. Disengage is a skill that does a quick jump back, damaging enemies in front of you, and it can be used to interrupt other actions, like dodge roll. If you use it against a parried enemy though, it causes an explosion and gives you a frenzy charge. Just be careful. If you parry too much, you're going to get stunned and possibly killed. You can combine this combo with Whirling Slash. Slash, parry, disengage, and you'll get an explosion from the disengage and the Whirling Slash. The Huntress also has a variety of elemental spear throw attacks. You could use Lightning Spear to bounce lightning between your foes. Or you could throw explosive spears into the ground. These spears take a while to detonate, but when they do, they'll incinerate anyone caught in the
That's pretty
blow.
nice.
All spear throws on the Huntress can also be empowered by frenzy charges. For example, explosive spears will do an even larger explosion and leave fire on the ground. And these empowered versions can activate even more combos. Using Whirling Slash over ground fire will suck it into the whirlwind, adding fire to the explosion. Using twisters inside a fire whirlwind will shoot out fire tornadoes as well.
It still gives the blind as well.
And you can do similar combos with ice and lightning too. Now, a key aspect of hunting is exhausting your foes by causing blood loss. This skill is Rake, which dashes towards your target and unleashes a deadly slash, opening up wounds on your enemies. Follow up with Disengage and watch them bleed out as they run towards you. On the health bar of monsters, you can see how much blood loss the enemy has experienced, and the Huntress has skills to take advantage of this. For example, using Blood Hunt will thrust forward and cause a bloody explosion. The more blood loss, the bigger the explosion. If you want to cause bigger bleeds, try out Rapid Assault. The final hit of this multi-hit combo will stick a spear into your enemy for a big bleed. Now, Explosive Spear and Rapid Assault both result in leaving spears behind, either in the ground or in enemies. But there are other skills that leave spears around too, like Storm Lance, that leaves an electrical spear that arcs towards enemies. But what can you do with all these spears? Detonate them, of course. Thunderous Leap will allow you to jump onto and explode any spears either in the ground or in your enemies.
That's pretty nice.
Now, as well as hunting animals, the Huntress also has the ability to work with them. While fighting any beast, you have the ability to tame it and use it as a companion. You can only have one companion at a time, but it will keep the mods that were on it. Try to find a rare beast with good mods to take full advantage of your ability to tame them.
That's pretty good. Some taming action going on.
Now, this is just the beginning of the Huntress. We've really tried to make the hybrid ranged and melee gameplay work for this class by having a huge amount of synergy between ranged and melee options. There are 22 new skills available for the Huntress. By endgame, you'll be slinging hundreds of insanely powerful spears, sending forth spirit animals and summoning the might of Solaris from the sky. But we still haven't talked about it.
So one of the things that I'm noticing is when playing through the first iteration of the early access, a friend of mine was playing, I think it was the Gemling class. It was the one where you would leave kind of like gas clouds all over the place, and then you could ignite them. And I think it was the gas clouds that were providing blinding on all of the enemies that entered it. I can't remember if that's what it was or if it was a separate skill, but something that he was doing was applying blinding. And that was back when I was still playing my summoner class. And I died so much less frequently with that summoner when I was running around with him playing because of how powerful blind is. So, I mean, I was making the joke earlier about this being kind of similar to the Spiritborn from Diablo, but one of the really bad kind of, I guess, both good and bad things about the Spiritborn from Diablo was it was insanely overpowered when they first added it. So I'm kind of wondering if this class isn't going to end up being really, really overpowered. I mean, you've got, a blinding mechanism on your essentially one of your primary attacks, and then you can add any of the different elemental effects to that attack, and then you have the like jumping in and exploding concept, and you can tame pets, and I don't know. It's starting to sound like this class is a little bit of a jack of all trades kind of concept. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see how the balancing goes for it.
Ascendancy classes yet. What can the Huntress ascend into? Well, the first Ascension class you could choose is the Ritualist. The Ritualist has embraced the darker side of his merry traditions by harnessing the power of animal sacrifice and plague. The Corrupted Life Force skill causes all enemies around you to grow volatile blood boils on their skin.
Oh,
when those
nasty.
enemies are slain, the boils will burst, spreading corrupted blood to all enemies around them. The Ritualist also excels in taking advantage of magical trinkets. The unfurled
Oh,
finger
hey.
skill allows you to equip an additional ring on a finger around your neck.
That's nice. Extra
Taking
inventory
Mystic
or equip
Attunement
slot there.
increases the bonuses of all the rings and amulets you have equipped. Now this is one of my favorites. As the Whisper's Ask grants you a new skill, Ritual Sacrifice. Use the skill on the corpses of slain rare monsters to absorb the power in their blood, to give you one of their modifiers for a short time.
That's not going to be powerful at all.
Specialize further into Ritualistic Sacrifice with As the Whispers Demand, which
Like
allows
you're
you to perform
a
that skill
built-in
yourself
headhunter
instead
build.
of a corpse. Cut your own hand, sacrificing some of your own blood to empower yourself. The Amazon Ascension is for those looking to hunt more than just beasts. Trained as an elite guard to the most important Asmeri elders, the Amazon will use more traditional fighting techniques mastered to perfection. The Predatory Instinct skill will cause you to reveal weaknesses in the defenses of rare and unique enemies, causing you to deal more damage. You can see those weak spots represented on their life bars.
Oh, interesting.
While using Elemental Infusion, any charges you consume will infuse your weapon with elemental power, causing any projectile attacks to explode on impact. The Critical Strike skill is as simple as it sounds. It takes your excess accuracy and gives it to you as critical strike chance.
That's nice.
Additionally, you have skills like Mystic Harvest, which allows your elemental damage to leech life, and Asmeri Brew to be able to use either flask to restore both life and mana. So those are the two new ascendancies for the Huntress. But
Now, one thing I would like to point out here is in the video there of him, or well, not necessarily him, but of the character fighting, they've shown some spots where they were getting pretty aggressive and running in and killing stuff, and I was a little concerned, like I said, about how overpowered the class might be. But you could tell in a couple of cuts on a few of those scenes that they were probably about to die, and that's why they cut the video at that point and went on to a different fight. So maybe the class is not going to be as overly powerful as originally thought, or maybe this was just an early build of it. So.
But those are not the only ascendancies in Dawn of the Hunt. We've added a new Ascension class for 3 of the other existing classes too.
New Ascension classes for other
First up,
classes.
For our warriors out there, we
Hey,
have the
warriors
Smith of
needed
Kitava.
something.
The warrior is a blacksmith in origin, taught by his father Renly. With this ascension, you can take your smithing skills to new heights by embracing power from the insatiable one himself, Kitava. Smiths of Kitava are master blacksmiths and have the ability to forge
Look at all
their
those
weapon,
nodes.
quite literally. Using the Against the Anvil notable skill, you can enhance your weapon with fiery destruction before any battle. After doing so, your attacks will release explosions on hit for maximum devastation. You can also use the power of Kitava to summon an animated copy of your weapon to fight alongside you. A great blacksmith can do more than just forging their weapon though. Their armor can be enhanced too. Now you might think this ascendancy class tree looks a little abnormal, and you're right. There's a lot of notable skills all disconnected at the bottom there. By taking this point here, which is free to assign, your character is unable to equip body armors with mods of any kind. So your body armor must be normal. Sounds like a downside, right? Except now in true blacksmith fashion, you get to craft your own body armor by taking those disconnected notables with your points.
Interesting.
If you want your body armor to grant life, take this notable. If you want resistances, take this one. There's so many choices. Think of it like you're crafting your own body armor, just in a more literal sense. Now, let's move.
I would like to point out there, if you can't wear armor with gear or with mods on it, I wonder if that's armor with no mods at all, or if you can just pick and choose specific pieces to wear that don't have mods on them. Because one of the things that I noticed there is, unless you can put multiple points into those, it looked like there were 3 nodes up there for lightning, fire, and cold protection, but it only gave plus 75. By the time you're in late game, that's nowhere near enough to keep yourself going. So, with all the negatives that you end up with, you probably are going to be pretty close to breaking even. So, yeah, that's not going to be anywhere near enough resist for in game. I'd be interested to see how that works.
Move on to those who prefer the reassuring feel of a crossbow in their hands, the Mercenary. Alongside the existing Ascension classes, the Gemling Legionnaire and the Witch Hunter, you can now play as the Tactician. The Tactician is a former Blackguard elite. Free from the duties of a Blackguard, he is able to use his training to decimate the monsters of Rayclast and earn a healthy income doing so. This training comes in the form of various skills like Suppressing Fire, which causes all projectiles to pin enemies. When combined with the Right Where We Want Them notable, your pin not only stops your enemies from moving, but stops them from performing actions too. similar to Freeze. With the soldier's training, the tactician also works well cooperatively. Using the whoever pays best notable, you can place multiple banners at once. The watch how we do it skill gives a portion of your weapon's damage to your allies as well. But if that isn't enough, you can also command your army of off-screen archers to unleash hell and carpet an entire area with arrows. Finally, witch players will be able to join their...
All right, well, I'm interested in seeing what the witch one does, but the one for that particular build with the Gimling Legionnaire, I mean, that entire class, I would say, is a really good league starter. Like the uniques and stuff that you needed to get that class going were pretty cheap, and you could blow through the campaign with it pretty easily, and you could do quite a bit of mapping with it as well. It just started getting really... It was like you were trudging along the deeper into higher end maps that you went. So it's nice to see that they're giving it a little love. I think that would be another one that would be really good for someone to play that wanted to play with friends that weren't necessarily great at the game. Because one of my complaints about playing with friends in games like this, I mean, a lot of them do this, is for one, your loot is split. So if you clear a map, you're only getting half as much loot, not to mention the fact that it arbitrarily assigns the loot to different people. So it's kind of frustrating when a couple of really good pieces of loot will drop and it always gives them to the other person instead of you. I find that to be really frustrating. I would like to see the loot either be on an alternating drop system or that it's just straight up private loot. So whatever loot you see that's on the ground belongs to you, and whatever the other person sees belongs to them. But the problem that I have is most companies, when they make cooperative games like this, their argument is always that, well, if you're grouping with other people, we're going to hike the health of the enemies by 100% because there's two of you. So, if you were doing 100%, I was doing 100%, in order for us to group together, then the creatures need to have 200% health. The problem that you run into with that, though, is your build is designed to take 100% of the enemy's health in a certain window. So when you're playing with a friend and now you're having to do 200% health, sometimes you don't quite kill things as fast as you used to, and then you end up dying to things. Or the person that you're playing with, their build is significantly slower than yours. So while in your game you're doing 100% of the damage, and in their game they're doing 100% of the damage that the two of you are doing, I should say the DPS that the two of you are doing, are not equal. And so if you have a lot higher DPS than your friend does, technically you're not killing things twice as fast, you're not going through maps twice as fast, things like that. So it actually starts to slow you down and is a negative aspect to grouping with other people. But what they said in that one was that a portion of your weapon damage goes to your allies, so that way if I'm a higher DPS class and then you give me a bunch of a portion of your damage gets applied to me as well, then that means I'm killing even faster, which could kind of balance that out if you had decent gear, but maybe you weren't quite as good of a player, or just didn't quite have that let's run an attack mentality. So I don't know, just a thought.
Legions by becoming undead themselves. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the Lich Ascension class. The Lich is a master of chaos and curses and could sacrifice her life to enhance her energy shield. The Crystalline Phylactery skill allows you to nominate a jewel in which to contain part of your soul, massively increasing its power. There's just one downside to splitting your soul this way, though. If you have no energy shield, your mana costs will shoot up.
Oh, interesting.
The Necromantic Conduit skill causes you and allies in your presence to have
so Eldritch Battery build, anyone?
Granting extra damage as chaos damage. Rupture the Soul makes enemies you curse explode with chaos damage when slain. Dominion over Flesh allows you to apply an additional curse. It's safe to say you'll be the true master of the occult by choosing the Lich class.
That's pretty cool.
So Dawn of the Hunt has the Huntress and 5 new Ascension classes, but it doesn't end there. Let's take a look at some of the new skills we've added. Now you may remember we've previously talked about the Raise Spectre skill. It's finally complete, and it will be made available in the upcoming expansion. It can be found in the occult skills on the skill gem crafting panel.
Okay, so this is huge. I'm definitely a simp for pet builds. I love pet builds in these games, especially when there's a lot of pets. or if you can get multiple different kinds of pets that have varying unique abilities and things along those lines. The Spectre builds, I remember like the Tukahama builds way back in the day. It's been a few years since you could do those, but I forget, they were Tukahama something, but they used to drop little totems on the ground that would have it'd be like a little laser of flame that would come out, about that far on your screen or so. And they would just kind of like laser target whatever was the nearest thing to them. And so the Tukahama's guys those were your specters, and then they would summon a bunch of those little totems. And then there were things you could do to increase the amount of totems that you could control, which by proxy your pets could control. So you would just, every single one of the Tukahama's guys that you had following you would summon like 3 different flame totems, and it would just obliterate anything on the screen. I mean, it would absolutely melt bosses. It's a pretty broken build, honestly. I miss it. It was so much fun to play, but I kind of understand why they removed it, because it was pretty broken. But that was one of the last like really great minion builds that I got to play. The minion build for this game wasn't too bad the first time around, but kind of like the gemling, it seemed like it kind of started to die off a little bit. If you went like fully traditional minion build, it just didn't seem to perform quite as well as some of the other classes in the end game. Your clear time was pretty slow. Sometimes you had problems killing bosses, or just various things because of how your minions would lag behind and stuff like that. And they ended up fixing a few of those things, but it still just felt kind of slow. So I'm excited to see what's going to go on with being able to do specters again. See if there's some really cool or semi-broken specters out there. This may be a really good patch window to play this class, to see what's out there.
Raise Spectre is a skill that allows you to trap the soul of almost any monster in the game, which you can then summon in the skill panel. Spectres cost spirit and will revive automatically if they die, but the spirit cost varies based on the power of the monster.
Okay, so that's really awesome. In the original Path of Exile, when you played a Spectre build, generally you had to raise the Spectre that you wanted from a specific corpse, and that was even so if they died for any reason, you had to raise them from that specific corpse again, which generally meant that you had to be in a certain tile set in the game. Like if you wanted the Tukahama's guys, for example, then you had to be in an area where Tukahama warriors and stuff could spawn. Otherwise, there was a high chance that you wouldn't be able to get those kinds of corpses. And then you would have to have like the Desecrate skill, which would just put a desecrated spot on the ground. And then there was, I can't remember if it was a modifier, like if it was a support gem that you put on it, or if it was like one of the talent, one of the, I guess that technically the talent points that you could take that would cause corpses to appear on that desecrated ground. So, I mean, I remember many times just sitting at the beginning of a stage, summoning the desecrated ground over and over and over, trying to get the correct dude, the correct kind of corpse to actually spawn so that you could then raise it as a specter. So the fact that these things automatically resummon themselves when they die is just a way better system. And, maybe it'll have a lot less downtime.
You could summon an army of weaker monsters, or a few of the more powerful monsters.
Oh, those are nice.
You can combine them with your existing skeleton minions, or summon exclusively specters. It's all up to you and how you want to customize your army of the undead.
Oh, well.
Given that there are hundreds upon hundreds of monster variants in Path of Exile 2, it's safe to say you'll be experimenting with this one for a while. We look forward to seeing which monsters serve you best.
Yeah, so they can nerf
now, let's
them.
move on to our next skill. Since we've been talking about summoning undead so much, let's have a change of pace and summon something a little more alive. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding the Summon Rower skill.
Oh, nice.
Summon your friendly rower to aid you in combat as a minion. You can also mount your rower in combat at any time, allowing you to move at full speed, even while shooting arrows or throwing spears.
Oh, that's interesting.
Be wary though, if you take too much damage while riding your mount, you can be knocked off and get overwhelmed. It's worth keeping an eye on your stagger bar, as falling off the mount can mean certain death.
And you get
On
knocked
the
off,
topic
you're
of new ways to
done.
enhance your character, let's talk about support gems. Support gems are used to modify your skill gems in meaningful and interesting ways. Currently, we feel that a lot of builds have insufficient options here. To alleviate this, we're adding over 100 new support gems.
Nice.
Hema crystals will enable a new kind of bleed build, turning the damage over time you would have done into explosive Vile crystals. Alignment is a support gem for bow attacks, which can reward skilled players with good positional skills. Caltrops will allow you to litter the battlefield with hazards, slowing your foes as you fling spears through their ranks. But there's plenty more for every playstyle, such as Enormity, Unsteady Tempo, Profanity, Retaliate,
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Syzygy. Yep, that's a real word. And many more. Now, we've talked about a new class, new ascendancy classes, new skills, and new support gems. But let's not forget about the core of a true action RPG, the items. To start with, let's talk about uniques. We're adding over 100 new unique items. This time, we've made sure to add uniques with a focus on mid and endgame tiers to make sure there are more exciting items to find for higher level characters. Let's look at some examples. Embrace your inner devil with Chernobog's Pillar. It grants you a large amount of fire damage based on your block chance.
It's nice.
The Coming Calamity allows you to become a true master of the elements, granting you all 3 Elemental Herald skills without costing any spirit. At the same time, it penalizes enemy resistances. Wastegate is a belt useful for builds using a single resource like Blood Magic or Archmage builds. With this belt, you can use 2 life flasks or 2 mana flasks. It's up to you. Now, we could go through these all day, but we'll leave most of them for you to discover. Suffice to say, though, we want there to be way more cool things to find. Over time, our goal is to add a unique to every single base item type at a minimum, so that you can chance any base in the game. Now, given that we have the Huntress, we have a set of unique spears from early game all the way through the end game as well. One example is Scyther's Spear.
Yeah, this is like I was talking about earlier. A good chunk of these are going to be for the new
class. It allows your
class.
knights to be aggravated, dealing substantially more damage. We're also introducing a suite of unique bucklers with some interesting parry mechanics. Kalgyra's Arc, for example, allows you to parry projectiles from any distance. And we're also adding our first unique charms. Bayra's Anguish will not only protect you from Ignite, but will also emit a devastating fire nova whenever you do get ignited. In sum, there's just a ton of new uniques to find. We can't wait to see the weird and broken builds that come out of it. Now, we also want to talk about crafting options. In each major update during early access, we'll be continuing to add and improve the options here. We have various new crafting tools that have been added as rewards to many of the different types of new content that we're adding. But for now, I just want to mention the changes to runes.
So that's one of the things that people have talked about a lot is kind of the difference between crafting your own gear and actually getting gear to drop. And that was one of the things that was really good feeling about early play in Path of Exile 2 was we were creating a whole bunch of gear. And it was, I mean, to me, that's just fun, you know, being able to get some exalted orbs or something like that and just slam them into a piece of gear and see what you get out of it. It's like that's just a really good feeling of gameplay. But the problem that I had with it was the insane amount of random chance that you have. It's like I want to reasonably be able to create a decent weapon. It's like, because that's the problem that you get into is if you get really lucky early on, you have a really low end weapon that has some pretty decent negatives to it. But some of the positives on it are just like, man, I don't really want to replace this because it's like the damage is crap, but the extra ability that I get off of it, or, you know, that or some freeze, you know, thing that's on it, it's just like, oh man, it's like if I get rid of this, it's going to get really hard, but I really need to get a new weapon that's going to do more damage. So I hope they are kind of going to implement some things to, I don't know, maybe reduce a little bit of the chance required because the number of prefixes and suffixes that you can get on a piece of gear, it's like 6 of them. I mean, that's a lot of random chance to get to something even halfway decent.
Runes add commonly available mods, but since they only have one tier, flat damage mods tend to get outclassed by endgame. So we've changed runes to have multiple tiers, allowing you to get higher tier mods than before. Our plan is to significantly expand the number of more specialized mods for crafting using socketables as we add new content over time. And the first new set of those comes from what we're talking about next. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding Asmarian Wisps, which can be found throughout both the campaign and the endgame. The Asmari spirit has made itself present in Rayclast, and it appears to be trying to warn, or maybe prepare us for the coming darkness. You will first encounter a manifestation of it in the Grellwood in Act 1, where you'll meet Delwyn, an Asmari hunter who is trying to find out what exactly is causing the spirit to behave this way. As you approach the Wisp, it will flee, leading you past monsters. Any monsters it comes into contact with are infused by it, making them more powerful. Each spirit is associated with a specific revered animal within Asmari culture. This one is a Wisp of the Great Bear, and grants enemies extra life and stun. The Wisp moves faster the closer you are, and as you move away, they slow down to wait for you. But if you get too far away for too long, they'll dissipate and return to the woods. As you continue to chase the Wisp, it will find and possess a rare or unique monster, granting it a new powerful ability. Because this was a Wisp of the Great Bear, this monster now also has increased life and stun. But on top of that, it will periodically summon a large spectral bear that slams with wild fury. If you're able to defeat this foe, you will be rewarded. For each monster that was infused and killed along the way, the rewards will be increased. Each Wisp has its own mechanics. The Wisp of the Winter Owl is a primal Wisp that causes enemies to deal extra cold damage, gain energy shield, and release wind vortices on death. When infusing a monster, they will call down large tornadoes to protect their host. The Wisp of the Wild Cat is a vivid Wisp that causes affected monsters to deal more critical strikes and become more evasive. When it infuses a monster, it will summon a barrage of feline spirits that will attempt to tear you limb from limb.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
If you're lucky, you may even find sacred Wisps that can do some pretty crazy things to the monsters they influence. Like the Wisp of the Cunning Fox, which turns normal monsters into magics, magic monsters into rares, and rare monsters into actual bosses.
That's not crazy.
Asmarian Wisps can drop a new set of socketable items that allow you to craft a wide range of interesting new mods onto your items. Each one may only be used on a specific item slot. As mentioned, the Asmarian Wisps can be encountered throughout the game, but there's also a new endgame map called the Asmari Ranges, a mountain village where the Asmari once lived, now overrun with corrupt monsters. This map always has multiple Asmarian Wisps in it, and familiar, yet not quite the same boss fight. Asmarian Wisps can also be further modified by the endgame Atlas tree as well, and by tablets. But I'm not going to be the one talking about those things. In order to cover all the new content in endgame, I'm going to hand things over to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. There's a ton to talk about with the endgame today, so let's dig right in. Path of Exile 2's early access began with a brand new endgame.
Okay, so here's one of the problems that I'm kind of concerned with is there was a lot of complaining in the initial launch of the early access that there wasn't enough robust content in the end game in order to entertain people, that there wasn't enough different events to run around and do, and et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that people had mentioned was, it's like, oh well, Path of Exile 1 had so many more things, and it's like, yeah, well, at one point Path of Exile 1 was a new game and it didn't have all that stuff in it. That was stuff that was added later on, and over many, many iterations, every time they did a new season, they would come out with new content that would get added in some shape, form, or fashion into the base game, and then the next season would do that in kind, and so every iteration, each season, the base game would just grow larger and larger as far as the base of the end game. Sorry, to be more specific. So yeah, I mean, obviously, with this being a brand new game, it makes sense that there would be less things to do in it, especially since they were trying to simplify the content a little bit and use it potentially, I think, to attract new players into the game. So there's a lot of people that I had talked to in the past that they were like, oh man, I'd really like to play Path of Exile. It looks really awesome. I've liked Diablo, and I really want to go and play this, this game because it just looks so amazing. But it also seems really complicated, and I don't know if I want to get into it because I don't understand how to do all the stuff. So with that being said, in order to reduce all of the complexity of the game, they kind of needed to reduce the number of events that were in the game too. Otherwise, you'd have tons of events that just weren't giving much of anything, because a lot of those events were what was handing out the various types of complicated currencies and stuff. So, with that being said, I understand why there was less content in the game. Also, we only had 50% of the base game, so when you look at this world map here, uh, like all of the different map types and stuff that you're seeing, it's only taking content from Acts 1, 2, and 3 into consideration. They still have Acts 4, 5, and 6, which would add a whole bunch of map variety, which will come naturally. And then once it would also add 3 more acts worth of new bosses, because that was the other complaint, was that there weren't enough bosses in the game, and people wanted there to be more bosses on more nodes, and then they wanted more boss variety. And it's like, well, that is naturally going to come as they can continue to develop content for the game, seeing as how we're supposed to have 6 acts on launch. So my biggest concern here is they're adding one new class. We're three-ish months in, maybe 4, yeah, almost 4 months in now, and we're just getting our first major content update. And from what I'm seeing, the majority of what we're getting is not game progression, it's just extra stuff for end game. I mean, we're a little over halfway through the video here, just a couple of minutes past halfway in the video, and they're already moving to end game. And the stuff that we saw that wasn't end game was basically these wisps, which are almost kind of like a seasonal event. And then you had the one class, and then it's like, oh hey, a bunch of new skills, bunch of new items, but no new actual content as far as progression of the storyline goes, which I think is going to solve a lot of the problems that the game has. Is by where's the other 5 classes at? Why are we only getting one new class? And then where are the other 3 acts at? If we're getting no acts and we're 4 months in, they said that this early access was going to last 6 months to a year. Well, I mean, if we're almost 4 months in and we've gotten one class out of 6 more classes that we're supposed to have, and we've gotten 0 acts out of 3 new acts that we're supposed to get, that's a little concerning, because what's the breakdown going to be? How are we going to ramp this up to get this to try to fit within a year if a third of the time is basically already gone, and we're not even close to a third of the content that's expected to be here on the last day, because they wanted to get in here and spruce up the end game, which, I mean, I get it. The end game is part of the full game, but at the same time, a lot of the complaints that people had are naturally going to be rectified by getting more content into the game that is expected to be here, like the acts and the extra characters and things like that. We'll give more map variety, more bosses, more items, all that kind of stuff will be in there, more variability on gameplay, and then they can polish this stuff in the very, like the end game, they could, make that a polish on the very first season that comes out, as opposed to doing all of this end game polish now and then figuring out 3 months from now, oh, well, we're going to have to change a bunch of this stuff because it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the content anymore, or something like that. The other negative too is at the beginning of the video they showed that there's new maps, which I'm guessing they're going to get into here, but it's like, well, are those new maps things that are going to be used in the new acts? And then if so, that it seems a little lackluster to me that they're putting those maps available for end game now, because that was one of the coolest things about playing through the game. I mean, who remembers getting into the moving caravan? It's like that was the coolest stage in the entirety of the game, was getting on the rolling caravan. I mean, how would you have felt if you saw that and played that map well before you hit it in the campaign? I mean, you'd see it and be like, "Oh, that was really cool," but then once you play through the campaign, it's just like, I've already seen that. That's kind of the problem that I have here. Is it's like, well, if you're making maps that are going to be unique to the end game, well, then you're not spoiling anything from the campaign. But if these are maps that you're going to use later, because like they showed one that it looks like as you're moving around the map kind of builds itself. Like there's a bunch of like hexagonal crystals that were popping up from the ground as the person was walking, and it was just a quick blip early on in this video, but that looks like a really freaking cool stage. And it's like, if that's going to be a stage that you would play in the campaign, I'd rather experience it the first time in the campaign. So I don't know. It's just a minor complaint of mine, but I feel like they're spending a whole lot of time trying to polish up the things that everybody whined about for an early access game. It's like, it's early access. You can't really whine about things not working because it's not all here yet. So hopefully they don't waste a whole lot of time just repeatedly polishing in game and then making the acts that you're forced to play through every single season that they start becoming dull and not a lot of fun because they get rushed at the end. Just a thought.
And it was clear that it needed a lot of work. After absorbing your feedback, we're ready to make some epic changes. The first thing is, we just need a lot more content. In Dawn of the Hunt, we have made sure to focus on increasing the sheer number of interesting and different encounters you will randomly stumble into as you explore the endgame. And the second goal is to smoothen the progression through maps and reduce the amount of annoying busy work. To start with, let's talk about the new interesting stuff to find. Well, the most obvious thing to add are new maps. As well as the Azmeri ranges that Jonathan mentioned earlier,
Those are nice looking.
Dawn of the Hunt also contains 7 other new maps.
Oh, snowy map.
All with their own custom encounters. Let's start with this one. The Feral Megaliths map starts off in the wild Ezomite forests. As you progress through the forest, you will find mysterious rune-carved stones that, when touched, surge with energy. After activating all the stones, you can find a grand henge, where all the energy is coalescing. You can then start an encounter. The area darkens, a storm moves in, and a concentration of energy summons a dangerous boss.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
You must fight and defeat the boss to get its rewards. Once you have defeated it, summon another. And another. And another. And another.
Nice.
You have 10 total waves of boss fights which get incrementally more difficult.
Oh, wow.
If you manage to defeat them, you get full boss rewards, but also opportunities to get new runes. These can only be obtained from this map. The Fractured Lake
Here was
contains
the one I
a
was talking
surreal
about.
waterscape with fractured mirror-like objects. As you move around the map, the terrain itself
That's just
elevates
really cool
from
looking.
below, creating the ground you walk on. In this unique map, all the rare monsters are mirrored, so you're always fighting 2 of the same rare at the same time, which can prove quite difficult. If you manage to overcome that challenge and make it to the end of the map, you'll be presented with a broken mirror, a powerful altar-like object that contains an item within it. The item contained within is a new base type, either an amulet or a ring, that can be crafted to have additional prefixes or suffixes at the cost of the other. The last unique map we'll show today is one based around the essence mechanic. You enter a crystalline cavern, and you will find
Oh,
a
that's
powerful
nice.
map boss imprisoned in the center. It is surrounded by many rare monsters, also imprisoned in essences. By freeing and defeating the rare monsters, the essence they held will be upgraded to a greater essence and be added to the imprisoned map boss. How brave are you? How many essences will you add to the boss? Overdo it, and you might lose everything. Underdo it, and you might regret it. It's your choice.
That's
Speaking of
rough.
essences, alongside visual improvements, you're now able to apply Varlorbs to corrupt the essences.
Oh,
with a
nice.
range of unpredictable outcomes. It could increase the number of essences, re-roll all the essences to the same type.
So this was a thing that you could do in Path of Exile 1, that when they came out with this version of the game, I was really surprised that you couldn't do, but you used to be able to alter the essences in various ways in Path of Exile 1 on these creatures, and Path of Exile 2 had nothing like that in the game. So I don't know if they'd intended to do that from the very beginning, or if they just kind of put these essence enemies in here as a placeholder for an event, and now they've decided to kind of just dig in on it and just make it a permanent part of Path of Exile 2. Not for sure which direction that they were going on that, but I'm happy that if they're going to keep it, that this is a thing that they're adding, because they were kind of boring previously.
or even upgrade the essences to greater essences.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What if they're already greater essences? Well, it can upgrade those too. We
Nice.
have 4 new corrupted essences. Essence of Hysteria, Delirium, Horror, and Insanity. Each corrupted essence has its own interesting combat mechanics. For example, the essence of Insanity causes you to question even your own mind, as monsters split into shadowy clones, and you must locate the real one before a devastating icy explosion freezes everything around it. Each of these has their own crafting outcomes. The essence of Insanity can be applied to a belt. It adds a mod that will ensure the next Vaal Orb used on the belt will guarantee adding 2 enchantments.
Nice.
It's worth noting all the essences in the unique map can also be corrupted too, if you're willing to risk it. It's worth noting we have also added 10 extra Atlas passive points you can earn by completing 5 different unique maps.
Nice.
Now, new maps are just the beginning. We had a goal where we wanted to make sure you were constantly finding exciting new.
That's just a quick thing on that. That's a really cool concept where they've added these new maps. Now it kind of looks like these new maps are potentially not part of the storyline. I mean, technically, I guess they still could be, but they kind of look like they're going to be unique to the mapping system for in-game, and the fact that they're giving you 10 more Atlas passives. And they're awarding them to you based on completing these unique maps. I think that's a cool concept, considering that the previous 40 points you got were basically from, it's like, oh, go complete, 1 or 2 level 2 waystones. Now go complete 4 level 3 waystones to get 2 more. Now complete 6 level 4 waystones. It's like it was a really boring system that they used the first time around. Which, like I said, I get it that it's early access, but I mean this is definitely a little more of an interesting way to get those Atlas passives.
New content, and that it could be lurking around any corner. So, we have added a bunch of new things that you could stumble into in any map you run. On your travels, you will sometimes encounter rogue exiles. Others like you who have been exiled and are openly hostile. Some are malicious, some are mad, while others are simply fiends for loot. They will challenge you, a fight to the death. They use the same skills available to players, and even the same items. They aren't just dressed up in those items, they're actually using them. It's going to feel like a true player versus player situation. Of course, if you are able to slay these exiles...
I mean, they say it feels like a true player versus player, but I mean, if you were watching the health pools, it's like that NPC's health is going down stupid slow. And if you're getting hit by his abilities, I mean, it was chunking whoever's playing this. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. We'll see.
Those items will all drop on the ground.
Oh, that's actually cool. So if they're carrying the items, if they're wearing the items in the fight, if you kill them, they'll drop it.
You want to be damn sure you kill them. Because if they kill you and your party, they'll portal out, taking their items.
So they portal out and take their items if they kill you. So who all remembers the concept of, you only have one portal when you're going into a map, and you're going through the map and you're killing off stuff, and you kill off a big pile of enemies, and then you die to some random exploding corpse or some bullshit like that. And the moment that you die, you see like some high-end item, Mirror of Calandra, or just something that you're just like, holy shit. And you get this screen here where you have to release and go back to to your hideout or wherever you entered the map from, and you don't get to go back and collect those items. So it's like, that's basically this is going to be. It's just, you're going to see an NPC wearing a really awesome item that you want. You're going to die to it, and then you're just going to watch them portal away while you're sitting there at a death screen. That's going to be just, I don't know. It's going to make me want to destroy things.
Items with them. Every fight will feel completely different depending on the items they come equipped with. These exiles are much smarter than your regular monster. They have capabilities to dodge roll, avoid your abilities with smart pathfinding, smart targeting, and much more action-packed gameplay. Fortunately, they're like you, and they're not super durable. Unless, of course, they're wearing uniques like Helm's Heart, in which case, expect a longer battle. There are 12 different rogue exiles you can find, each with their own skills and personalities.
That's cool.
Some may insult you, while others may admire your honor in combat. Another encounter you might stumble onto in Dawn of the Hunt are one of 4 new unique strongboxes. Strongboxes are chests with modifiers. When you try to open them, they activate traps and spawn waves of monsters that you must defeat to access the loot. Let's take a look at 2 of the new unique boxes that are harder to find and behave just a little bit differently.
Oh, this look neat.
The Ogham's Legacy Strongbox has a corpse splayed out in front of the rune-carved stone. Upon interacting with the stone, you activate Forbidden Ezomite magic, which revives the monster as a powerful rare. The Strongbox comes with a modifier which determines how many times it will revive that rare. Each time you defeat the monstrosity, the Strongbox revives it again, adding an extra modifier to the monster. With each resurrection, it becomes more difficult, but also more rewarding. This Strongbox is infused with Thaumaturgy from ancient Vaal technology. Eshel's Torment has a powerful artifact inside, and is guarded by Chaos itself.
Oh, nice.
Defeating the monsters will grant you a unique item, with a specific corrupted outcome. You'll have to find the other 2 for yourself.
Yeah, look at that one there.
With a specific corrupted outcome.
Yeah, so the beetle. This looks like a beetle here. It reminds me. There was a stage that had a giant beetle like this in one of the acts. I think it was Act 2, and the way that the beetle worked is it always dropped, several pieces of gear and various items. It had a much nicer drop table than any other creature in the game. So people would go and kill the beetle, and then I forget if the trick was that you just die because that forces everything to respawn, or if you could actually just walk out of the area and come back if it respawned it. I forget exactly what it was to cause it to respawn. I didn't really abuse it that much before they removed it from the game. But you could just repeatedly get this thing to spawn and just farm tons and tons of gear off of it. So it's really funny that they've kind of stuck this in here as kind of like an homage to that particular event.
You'll have to find the other 2 for
Exploit,
yourself
I guess
to
is
see
what I was
what they
looking
do.
for.
Now, let's talk about the introduction to the endgame. Upon starting the endgame, Doriani tasks you with cleansing corruption to help restore the land. However, in practice, the quest objective just sent you on a grind to clear 15 maps. We wanted to make the quest to unlock your Atlas passives much more interesting. Now, Doriani is tasking you with a more specific objective. On the Atlas, you will find areas of corruption caused by the beast. In the center of each one, you will find a corrupted nexus, the source of the affliction. In the areas leading up to the nexus, you will notice that corruption spills out from slain enemies and amalgamates into powerful monsters. Corrupted maps existed on the Atlas before, but we've done significant work on improving these monsters. We've also done a full pass on the modifiers on these maps to make them more interesting and more rewarding. Once you reach the nexus, you will have a new task: cleanse the source of corruption. When you defeat the last rare in those maps, they will spawn one of 3 terrifying bosses, amalgamations of corruption itself. After defeating that boss, Doriani will come and cleanse the corruption for good. As the remains of the boss are purged of corruption, it coalesces into raw crystallized power, which you can use to gain points for your Atlas passive skill tree.
Nice. The
upgrade system that allows you to add and enhance content in your maps. We didn't stop there though. When you complete a corrupted nexus, all of the remaining surrounding corrupted maps will become cleansed maps.
Oh,
Cleansed
interesting.
maps also have new monsters.
You're probably gonna have to decide. So on this, if it has new monsters and new bosses, you're probably gonna have to decide when you get to one of those Nexi that you're going to have to either clear all the corrupted maps around it because you want to do more corrupted stuff, or just try to make a beeline straight for the Nexus, destroy that, and then do a bunch of the cleansed maps that that appear after you've destroyed the Nexus. There's probably going to be different kinds of loot and stuff like that that you can get. So that might be one of the ways that they give you more targeted farming for specific types of uniques or something like that, which is good.
And their own set of modifiers and rewards, including finding fracturing orbs by slaying cleansed enemies.
Okay.
These orbs can be used in crafting on a rare item to cause one of its modifiers to become fractured. A fractured modifier is one that cannot be modified by any means. You are able to freely modify the item, ensuring the fractured modifier will never change.
Okay, so that's completely nuts. So that's a really good concept for. I'm assuming you can probably only fracture an item once, so or if you fracture it, it maybe will change which thing is currently locked down. My guess is you'll only be able to do it one time per item, but we'll see. But that was always one of the biggest problems with trying to make a new piece of gear is if you had something with four or five prefixes and suffixes on it, or if you got to six of them. Let's just say you fully kitted out an item and you got six total prefixes and suffixes on it, then you're like, okay, well, it's like I got four things that I really wanted, and then there's these two things that are just garbage and they do nothing for me. So the only way I can make this item better is to slam it with a chaos orb and try to re-roll one of those on there. And it's like no matter what, when you slam the first chaos orb, the thing that it took away was what made the item powerful. It's like, oh, I had boots with 35% movement speed. I slammed a chaos orb on them, boom, 35% movement speed gone. That's the thing it decided to reroll. Or like the plus to all levels of minions on here. Like let's say you had one that has +5 to all minion skills, and then you slam a chaos orb on it and it rerolls that ability, and it's like, okay, well, this went from being a really cool item to it is now worthless. So it's nice that they're putting this in here because I mean there's no guarantee that when you fracture it that you're going to fracture that particular skill that you really want. So I mean I guess we'll see if you can just keep fracturing it over and over to change which skill that it's locking down. I feel like that would probably end up being kind of powerful, but I mean, out of 6 skills, you still can only get one, even if you just keep redoing it over and over until you lock in the one you really want, that you want to ensure doesn't go away. So yeah, I don't know. That seems like a really awesome system because, yeah, I hate slamming stuff with chaos orbs and then it's just like, oh yeah, this item's worthless.
If you get the right item with the right mod, it can prove to be a very powerful crafting base indeed. You must now choose. Do you complete all the corrupted maps and then the Nexus? Or maybe you beeline to the Nexus, complete it, and do all the remaining maps cleansed. Both have rewards to entice you and challenges to assess. Now, let's have a talk about towers.
Yes, let's talk about
One
towers.
thing we've had a lot of feedback on is the busy work around running towers and managing your tablets. The first change we've made here is that we have reduced the number of towers drastically, so there are now 1/3 as many as before, but we've made them much more powerful.
Nice.
To start with, tablets now inherently add twice as many mechanics, but that's not all. Running higher tier maps and towers now increases the number of mechanics applied by tablets. By tier 15, the bonus is double, allowing a single tablet to now add 4 times as many mechanics as before. So, we're running far fewer towers, dealing with fewer tablets, and affecting even more maps than before. But because there are fewer towers overlapping with each other, you won't get as many opportunities to stack different tablets. In order to solve this, we've made it so that each tower can consume up to 3 tablets at once.
Okay, so that was really good because that was one of the huge complaints about the base version of in-game was that there were way too many towers. Originally, it was the same tile set over and over and over, and it just got really redundant and boring. And then there were just so many of these towers all over the map. You were running them constantly. I mean, even if you just needed to get through an area for whatever reason, sometimes you'd have to run through 2 or 3 just to get through a specific spot on the map. And then you wanted to run them because you wanted to get to the towers as quickly as possible to drop these tablets in them to make all of the surrounding nodes get more spots, like more affixes on them. and it was just kind of a boring, very derivative style of play. So I think this is an excellent way to fix it. I mean, they did add in a bunch of new variations on the tower map, which is great. So it gave it a little bit of randomness to what the map was going to look like when you get into it. But pretty much everybody would just do like a waystone, like tier 1 or tier 2, just throw it in there, fly through the tower as quickly as possible, get to the end, and not worry about looting anything, because there weren't really that many enemies in those maps as a rule. And then they really didn't have any bosses, and there were not very many rares. I think on average you would get 2 per map. When they changed to give the variations, they did increase the number of rares that could spawn, which was really nice, but the original system was awful. So this just seems like another pass, another iteration on this, where they're like, hey, we understand that people don't like doing these as much, so we're going to make them cover a much larger area. You can use 3 tablets in each one, and then we're going to third the amount, we're going to cut down to 1/3 the amount of towers that there are, so you don't have to do these things as frequently. So I really like this system. That's really nice.
Always get 1 slot on completing the tower, but if you can complete a tower with more mods on the waystone, you can unlock a 2nd or 3rd slot. Overall, this allows for even more juicing from towers.
Okay, so basically what this is saying is, I guess you technically could still use a low tier runestone, but you want to upgrade it. So it looks like it's 1 to 2, I guess, will give you the first one, is what it said, and then 3 to 4 gives you a second one, and then 5 to 6, I guess, or being at 6 will give you the last one. So you technically could still do a tier 1 waystone, but just upgrade it to a rare. Just make sure it has 6 prefixes and stuff, total prefixes and suffixes on it, and then run it, and that will unlock the 3 slots on it. I'll be interested to see if they add a reason for you to want to do like tier 15 waystones in them, because there was really no point to doing that previously. So we'll see.
While drastically reducing the amount of busy work you have to do. On top of that, towers are much more interesting maps because they can now spawn with all mechanics, including bosses.
Oh, nice.
Each tower map has a new boss. Let's take a look at a couple here. The boss fight of the Alpine Ridge map has 2 powerful witches contesting for territory.
Oh, there you go.
One witch has an affinity for ice, the other fire. Who will win? Hopefully neither. The boss of the Sinking Spire map is a remnant of the Val that has been charged with lightning. It uses a full suite of lightning abilities. But be careful, if any of them hit the surrounding constructs, they will power up. Another thing that we've seen a lot of feedback about is sustaining waystones. As we looked into it, we realized that the people who couldn't sustain waystones were dying a lot. A lot more than we had expected. And that made us realize something. During the campaign, the expectation is that you can die multiple times in order to learn how to overcome challenges. You are able to learn how the monsters behave, adapt to their skills, and eventually overcome them. But as soon as you get to the endgame, you are effectively no longer allowed to die if you want to sustain waystones. By the time you are getting towards the end of endgame, we want you to have to be careful not to die. But it certainly shouldn't be that we have such a sudden shift as you run your first maps. The first change we're making is you can now respawn and return to a map if you die.
What?
Continuing from where you left off.
Okay.
When you start the endgame, you get up to 6 total attempts per map.
This is funny because they were
As you add more
adamant.
modifiers to a waystone, the number of respawns goes down.
They were adamant
This
about
means
this
that
not
as you get to
happening.
the point that you're running every waystone as a rare, you will have to be more careful. In parties, everyone gets to respawn that number of times. But we still think it's important that you can kill a boss in one go. In order to allow that to happen, we've made a change so that once you start the boss fight, it changes over to the same respawning system we use for pinnacle bosses. This means that the map owner can choose to respawn everyone at the same time.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting. So that covers a couple of issues with playing with friends, which is uh, I know one of the people that I was playing with had a problem with their character, and they would frequently die in the maps. And then because you only get one portal, I would just keep going with the intention of trying to finish clearing the map so that someone would get the full benefit out of the map. And then the person that I was playing with just had to sit there and wait while I finished the map, which is just, I mean, it's just kind of a crappy way to to kind of deal with wanting to play with multiplayer, especially if you have someone that that's poor at the game and is just going to die constantly. Like that's even worse. So this is a this is kind of a good concept for uh, allowing people to respawn and just get back into play, which is really nice. And the fact that it gives everyone the same number, so if there's 6 portals, then everybody gets 6 respawns, which is nice because previously when you would respawn, it would open up 6 portals, but just by going into the map, if you and a friend were playing, you used up 2 of the 6 portals, so there were only 4 left. And then each time one of you died, you used a portal, so there can only be 4 deaths total. And referring back to the point of if you're playing with someone who is really poor at the game, if they were dying 3 and 4 times and you weren't dying at all, well, now they've used up all the portals, and then the very first time you die, well, you're just done. You don't get to go back. So that's a that was an annoying thing to have to deal with in Path of Exile 1. I frequently would play with people that just like to goof around with builds and stuff like that, and they would die constantly, and it just made trying to group and play with other people really annoying to deal with. So I was pretty hesitant to even do any grouping with people in this version of the game, like moving to Path of Exile 2, but I had another friend of mine that played, and we decided to play some together, and we ran into, like I said, that issue where the class that he had was having a rough time at the point, and he was, dying occasionally, and then I would just have to finish the map, and it still was kind of a crappy feeling to how to play. It's like, well, it's like I don't want to leave the map and just lose out on everything, but at the same time, it's really lame for the other person to just kind of have to sit there and wait until the map, until you get finished with it. So I like this concept where everybody, gets the same number of portals and you can come back in. And then reducing it as you add more affixes makes sense. So you can do, if you want to do like lower tier, like magic maps or something like that, just have 2 prefixes or suffixes on them, then you can do those, and it looks like you're going to have like maybe 4 portals at that point. So you can kind of run around with your friends or do whatever, and that should be pretty entertaining. And then having the same feel on the last boss where you have to kill the boss in one go, otherwise you don't get it. I like that idea. I hate the kind of like lemmings concept on a boss where, because when they have the ability to be a lemming when going for the boss, that just means that they make bosses that the majority of people will have to lemmings against in order to kill them. If there's people out there that don't understand what lemmings are, look them up. They're pretty funny. But yeah, just that concept of like, oh, I'll go in and do 20% of the boss's health, and then I die, and then I go back and fight it again, and now it's at 80% health. So then I do another 20%, and I die, and I go back in again. That just gives them the ability to make really difficult bosses that they expect you to, potentially be dying multiple times for. Where with this, they expect you to do it in one life and one go. The bosses won't necessarily be as like finger bleeding to try to kill them.
Another complaint we've seen a lot of is players not wanting to do the pinnacle content because of the experience penalty from dying.
Yeah, that's huge.
A change we've made here is that all pinnacle content now no longer grants experience, but also no longer removes experience on death either.
That's good.
Dawn of the Hunt also brings the first...
So that's something that's interesting, because they were talking before, technically Path of Exile 2 had double death penalty in it, and a lot of people were really upset with that, and I agree. I think it was rightly so that people were upset about it, because in Path of Exile 1, you had XP loss every time you died. And once you started getting into the 90s, the amount of XP that you needed increased drastically, but the percentage that you lost on death was always a constant. So it just meant, I think it was 10%, like 2 bars of XP that you would lose every time. So 10% of the maximum XP that you would lose on death. And then once you started getting into the mid to late 90s, especially the late 90s in level, you would take hours and hours and hours to get a couple of bars. So a single death, means that you could have lost like 4 hours of gameplay of experience grinding. So that is, like that was highly a high end penalization for um, for dying in the game. And then they added this concept of like, oh, well, not only are you going to lose a buttload of experience when you die, but you only get access to the map one time. So now you've lost a bunch of experience and you're locked out of the map, and it cleared all of the affixes off of the node. So even if you want to redo it again, all of the affixes on it are gone. So yeah, and you're using another waystone and all that kind of stuff. So they were talking about they really didn't want to get rid of the limited number of attempts for the maps. So they were talking about actually removing the experience penalty, which I personally would rather see them do. I think it would be a lot more entertaining, in my personal opinion, if they multiply the amount of experience that you needed to get from 90 to 100 by like a factor of 10. Like just make it insanely long, but 0 XP loss. So it still takes a really long time to get them, but you're just always making forward progression instead of it's like, well, I had a bad game, like a bad day of playing, and I died like 5 times and I've lost like 15 hours of XP grind. It's like, that's just a horrible feeling in a game. I really don't like that concept. Just feeling like you're having this insane setback. It just makes you not want to play anymore. And not every build is going to have that problem, but some people definitely go through that. I've definitely gone through it with some builds as well. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, 90 is technically considered max and everything beyond that's just gravy. It's like, well, maybe for you, but for me, when the experience stops is what max is. So I want level 100. And there's a lot of other people out there that share that mentality, and it's not acceptable to say, oh, well, you don't really need those, so just don't worry about them, because some people's brains just don't work that way, and mine's one of them. So it looks like they've done kind of a hybrid for this particular setup. So now you can have multiple entrances on maps depending on how many affixes are on the map. And then when you go in and do pinnacle bosses, which I'm assuming are also going to include things like Invitation to the King and the Delirium splinters, once you form them and do the Delirium map at the end, that's technically should be a pinnacle boss. And then also the Hand of Chiula, I'm blanking on what the event is called, but the one with the big hand sticking up and you touch it and it grows. When you get enough of the splinters of that and actually go into the unique map for it, that map should technically also be considered pinnacle boss. So if all of those things are considered pinnacle bosses and you don't lose experience for dying in those anymore, that's phenomenal, and I love that idea. I think that's really good, because I mean, a lot of your deaths are going to come from really hard pinnacle bosses, and it kind of makes people want to avoid doing them in some cases. So really good fix for that, I think.
Batch of Twilight Order reliquary keys from the early access supporter packs. These keys contain items selected by our supporters. They can contain any unique item found in Path of Exile 2. If the selected item is a pinnacle boss drop, then only special keys dropped by this content will be able to provide these items. For example, Hand of Wisdom in action can only come from a key dropped by Zesht. We're also making a change that allows pinnacle boss uniques to drop at any difficulty.
Oh, that's nice.
Rarer uniques will be rarer at lower difficulties, but still possible to find.
That's really cool.
This applies to the drop charges for the reliquary keys.
Yeah,
from
those
this content
diamonds
as
were
well.
so rare.
We spoke about towers and tablets earlier, but we have also added a suite of unique tablets.
Oh, nice.
Each of these adds crazy interactions to the maps influenced by it. For example, this unique tablet allows you to run any map in a tower's radius without requiring connections, which can be quite useful for jumping gaps and traveling around your atlas.
Nice.
And this tablet causes all runic monsters spawned during expedition encounters to be duplicated, and weakens all expedition monsters that emerge from the ground. The Atlas tree has also been expanded, and you can find many of the new mechanics there,
Nice.
and improvements to existing ones too. Now, through this live stream, we have mentioned quite a few new crafting options that we've added. New runes, corrupted essences, fractured mods, and jewelry crafting bases. But we did have just one more crafting system to talk about: recombination.
Ooh.
Expedition was the only in-game mechanic that was lacking a crafting system. So
That was
needed
from
to change.
Settlers of Calgar, I think.
Recombination is a mechanic that might be familiar to some players. It allows you to merge two items together.
So if you're unfamiliar with what recombination does, is it will take these two items, and for each, basically for each line, what it essentially does is it'll randomly pick one and put that on the new item. So when you hit combine, it'll take line one on both of these and go, okay, which one of these am I going to give? Okay, we're going to pick this one, and it'll stick it on the new item. And then it goes to line number 2, and it goes, okay, I'm going to randomly pick one of these things and stick it on the new item. So it could technically allow you to get like this really high increased physical damage on, and then the next one gives you this +5 to level of all projectile skills, which would be absolutely insane to get. And then if you could pull this attack speed, would be really awesome. And then the mana gain is probably not great, so maybe you would go for the leech physical damage as life, especially with the amount of physical damage that you're doing at this point. So yeah, I mean, you potentially could make a really awesome piece of gear here. I don't know exactly what happens when something has an extra line. So this one is 3 lines and this one is 4. My assumption would be is it just adds a blank line here, so it randomly either gives you the nothing that this one had or the thing that this one had, or it potentially could just give you whatever the extra line is always. So it's like, oh well, one of these has a 4th line, so you just get that line. I don't know if they'll cover that here or not, but I really like this this system. It's pretty cool.
Hoping to get the best elements of each on a single new item. This new crafting bench will be unlocked as you complete your first expedition.
It got almost exactly the ones that I thought it was going to, with the exception of it got accuracy over the physical damage, which sucks.
And requires artifacts found during expeditions to fuel it. The rarer the mods on the item you are combining, the more expensive the cost. That wraps up all the major in-game changes we're talking about today. With all the system changes and new content, we can't wait to get in there, start blasting maps, and obliterating monsters. There is one more thing we wanted to clarify before we move on, which is that all the content we've talked about today will be made available in the existing early access leagues, so you can play your existing characters. However, there will be new leagues made for those who wish to start in a fresh economy. It is recommended to start over and get the full new experience in the Dawn of the Hunt leagues.
Okay, so does that mean that they're actually going to do a Dawn of the Hunt league that you can play in? I mean, I don't really understand what they're saying there, unless it was just the wording that he used for it was just, I'm not following the wording, but it sounds like they're just going to have essentially a new league that you can join, but the league is going to be available on both versions of the game, whereas normally your old league characters would go into like standard league that would not have new league content. But it looks like in this particular case, they're just going to have it in both places. So the nice thing about that is I'm sure they're going to be doing some balancing passes and things like that on some skills that already existed in the game. They didn't really cover that here, but I'm sure that that's probably going to be in here. So with that being the case, then it will be nice to be able to play your previous character to just see what changes have happened and see if that's a character that you want to play again, because you technically already have it in game and can be like, oh yeah, this is still really fun, or oh god, no, this is awful. Why would I want to do this? So that'll be nice to be able to check out. And then plus you can use all of your currencies if you just want to, play the new Amazon class and just kit it out with all kinds of really overpowered gear. You could probably do that as well. But I will probably, at the very least, I'll probably start the new Amazon character on a new league and just play from scratch with the new economy and kind of see how it works out.
For all our existing early access players, we're really looking forward to joining you playing in this new update. For those who don't already have access and are interested in playing Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, you are able to at any time purchase an early access supporter pack at www.pathofexile2.com. Additionally, the Paladin and Penance supporter packs are now available to purchase in Path of Exile 2 and contain 6 microtransactions each and the full pack's face value in points. All the microtransactions contained within these packs are purely cosmetic and do not affect your character's power or progression in any way. Thank you so much for your ongoing support.
Oh, weird. It's like a race. All right. So yeah, I think one of the things that I do want to point out is for anyone that's watching this content that hasn't played a Grinding Gears game before, they do have all these supporter packs and stuff like that you can purchase, but they are always just cosmetics. Now they do give you some currency as a rule for in-game, but it's a special type of currency that you can use to buy other various types of cosmetics. The only thing that you could do with that currency that would be remotely even close to any sort of pay to win is the same currency that you use to buy like extra bank slots. It only affects your bank, so it doesn't allow you to carry more gear back. You still have to carry all the gear in your inventory and take it back to your bank to drop it off. And it doesn't affect anything in the rest of the game as far as gaining loot goes from creature drops. Now, one benefit that you do gain by having certain types of bank slots is the ability to sell things, because the basic 4 slots that you get are not considered premium slots, so you can't actually put things up for auction to sell to other players through that method, through the in-game auction house system. You have to have premium stash tabs in order to do that. So that's kind of their restriction as far as playing for free goes. Also, if you're looking at getting into this game for the first time, the $30 price tag for getting into early access is actually a purchase of $30 worth of that currency. So you're not actually paying for early access, you're paying for the currency. The currency can be used in both Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. So you can choose which one you want to use it in. You don't get to use it in both, but if you're a PoE 1 player and you haven't checked out PoE 2 yet, you can spend the $30, go in and try it out, and if you don't like PoE 2, well, you got $30 worth of currency for Path of Exile 1. So that's one benefit for people that might be sitting on the fence still and haven't pulled the trigger to check the game out yet. I highly suggest checking the game out. For those of you that haven't played Grinding Gears games before, like I said, if you haven't played Path of Exile 1, they don't really do any kind of pay to win. You can't pay money to make your character stronger by any means legally in game. Now, it is an online game and it suffers from the same problems that all other online games of this nature suffer from, which is gold farmers, basically people that will go into the game, collect a crapload of currencies or whatever, and then sell that across a website to people. You can buy currencies that way and then use that currency to power up your characters, but that is not considered a legitimate means, and it is not something that Grinding Gears games supports or condones in any shape, form, or fashion. So yeah, a really good company to deal with. The other thing that was really phenomenal as well, if you want to know some history about Grinding Gears, is all of the bank tabs that existed in Path of Exile 1. When you got into Path of Exile 2, if those types of tabs existed in Path of Exile 2, you got them all at no extra charge. So if you had 10 premium tabs in Path of Exile 1, when you log into Path of Exile 2, you have 10 premium tabs. So that's really nice. And then the specialty tabs that existed in Path of Exile 1, one of which is the currency page, which allows you to have one slot for each currency type, and then it will stack up to like 10,000 of that currency as opposed to the standard like 10 or 20 per stack. That particular stash tab also exists in Path of Exile 2, so you got that completely for free. The map tab exists in both games, so if you own it in the first one, you get it in the second one. Now, I haven't found anything so far to be able to check and see if it works the other way around. So if you've never played it before and you log in and you buy tabs in Path of Exile 2, I don't know if you get those in Path of Exile 1. I haven't checked. I haven't really thought of a way to check other than just buying extra premium, stash tabs, which I just don't really need at this point. So, so if anybody has that information, be sure and leave it in the comments so that we know if you buy stuff in the second one, if it retroactively activates on the first one. But yeah, other than that, they're a great company to play games from. They put a whole lot of time and effort in trying to get their games balanced out. And I know a lot of people were really overwhelmed about Path of Exile 1 having way too much content in it and it being really difficult to understand. And that is very true, even being a longtime player of Path of Exile 1 with, more than 1,000 hours in the game. There is a lot about the first game that I still didn't understand. I played in probably every other or every third season that would come out, I would go back and play. So I didn't play them every single one, and I didn't always play them from start to finish, but I played a significant portion, and there were still things in the game that I didn't understand, even having those kinds of hours into playing it. So I understand how people that are just wanting to jump in and play a game like this, your first couple of times playing it is just going to be kind of a disaster in Path of Exile 1. So this is a great time to get into Path of Exile 2 and kind of learn the game. And there's far fewer currencies in Path of Exile 2 than there are in 1. Of far fewer ways to upgrade gear and things like that, so you can kind of grow with the game as it goes. And the nice thing about it is if you want to go back and play Path of Exile 1 and all of those years worth of content that is there, by playing Path of Exile 2 and learning what the currencies do, those currencies are similar in Path of Exile 1 and do similar things. So that will give you a huge advantage if you want to go back and play the first game and kind of check out and see what it was all about. But yeah, this patch looks absolutely phenomenal. I cannot wait to get in and play it. Hopefully you found this content entertaining. The feedback that I gave, hopefully it was helpful or at least amusing or useful. And if you enjoy the content, make sure and hit that like and subscribe. And you can always come and check me out on live streams. I generally stream 4 days a week, Wednesday through Saturday. And I will definitely be playing this on launch day. So if you have questions or things like that, feel free to hop into the chat and ask away. But yeah, just hit that like and subscribe and come back and see me in the future. Hope everybody had a great time, and we'll catch you next time.